You're listening to the Nerd to Know Media Network. Join us at nerdtoknowmedia.com.
Broadcasting from the Blanchardstown Centre, this is Phoenix FM.
This is 92.5 Phoenix FM, community radio for Dublin 15.
Hey everybody, it's JB Jeremy Borash, and you are listening to Darrow O'Connor on the...
Welcome to the Wrestling Rewind, the only wrestling podcast by fans who don't hate wrestling.
Alright everybody, it is Christmas, on that weird period between Christmas and New Year's, but if you're listening to this on Phoenix 92.5 FM, Happy New Year! It is 2022. Yes, the sequel to 2020, which we're all so happy to have. And this is the Wrestling Rewind, of course, bringing you the best of pro wrestling in the past, usually. But we're going to do something a little bit different. I guess it's in the past, where we're going to look back at 2021, because, you know, Martin and myself mainly cover stuff from the 2021, which we do know. But we are joined by the one, the only, James TruePenny. James, welcome back to the show, man. How have you been?
I've been all right. I'm welcome to come back to my annual appearance for the Rewind, and blessed to be in the company of such fine gentlemen.
We appreciate it. I think it's the first time we've talked to Martin. So, Martin, how are you?
Oh, flying, just like you say, in that Christmas, New Year's lull where you're regretting eating too much and drinking too much and hanging out with too many members of your family.
I'm in work at the moment, not at the moment, but I am in work over this period, and like nothing's going on. So you're just sitting there going, "This is pointless." Like nobody's here. You're just sitting there going, "Well, I guess I should be doing something." But yeah, it's I don't know. No one should work over this period because nothing happens and no one does anything. So it's
I went back to, I did 1 day's week of private teaching during the holidays at the moment. So I went back to my old hometown to work today. And there was nothing open for lunch. There was one pub open for lunch, and I had the saddest burger and chips in the world. It was like, like I said, don't put the salad on. We put it on the side. I said, I'm not going to eat it. So, and if you put it in the bun, it'll just make it horrible and cold. So just give me the bun. And you expect kind of at least a sesame seed bun that they may have toasted, but no, it was just a white bap with a burger and the thinnest fries I've ever seen on a plate.
See, they do not even care one bit. They're like, we're like, no, this doesn't matter. This doesn't count until New Year's, and maybe not even New Year's because it's a bank holiday. I don't know if it's bank holiday in the UK, but in Ireland it is on the Tuesday. So nothing really starts. As I said before the show, we've had a lot of technical issues. I've got a computer because my PC basically exploded in front of me, and then I ordered it. Have to return it. I have no idea when it's arriving. Could be next week. Could be next year. I don't know. So
well, next week and next year are one and the same.
Well, that's a good point actually as well. But I meant 2023. But anyway, we do have a lot to get through this week. 2021 in and of itself was an interesting year. We have two guest picks. So we say anyone who checked out the Nerd to Know Basis show over the weekend would have known the kind of format that we took, because it is the format that we use on the show as well, where we have our match of the year, rest of the year, etc. But we also had some write-ins. Chris from Upon the Turnbuckle and Bryn from Nerd to Know dropped in with his picks as well. And of course, they're all AEW stuff. So it's like, I don't know if it's true or if it is true or if he just like trolling me. I can't tell. It could be both.
I will say, obviously, I was part of the Steel Chair Wrestling Magazine Awards this year, and there was a lack of WWE action of phenomenal level because none of us
You mean to tell me
it.
that the zombies didn't win anything?
Nah, it was. Bianca Belair was third best wrestler of the year, and I think Roman Reigns was second. So they didn't do too bad, but there was a big drop off.
See, it's not that I don't agree with the picks, but I don't know if he picked them because he believes it or because he's trolling me. That's the thing. I just can't tell. Although at least it wasn't all Cody, because then it would have just been a full troll. So maybe he does believe it. Maybe he does.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So guys, again, thank you both for being on the show.
That's okay.
How was your Christmas before we get into it?
Decoratey.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You were saying you're
painting
you're
rooms
around
and
today.
stuff. Yeah, I had some decorating to do. I had some chilled out. I watched some cool movies. I watched a lot of wrestling because that's what I do mainly. I watched the DDT show called I can't remember what it was called, but I watched the DDT show on Saturday. That was really funny and really, really cool. Yeah, so yeah, watched a load of wrestling, did some painting.
Martin, how was yours?
Yeah, sure. I went down to see my ones, and everybody's kind of hemming and hawing about who you can and can't see. You know, oh, should we go and see Mary? But Mary's second cousin tested positive there a week ago, and maybe if we go and see Mary, but just stand in the garden. And then I just came back up to my house and played Hades for 3 days.
You know what I'm thinking of doing in the new year when my computer does arrive? I'm just gonna get a Meta headset and then just go to Meta and like never leave.
Oh,
Genuinely.
into Suckerland.
Yeah,
Just your life is going to become an episode of Red Dwarf.
Well, the thing about it is,
Or
it's
Black Mirror.
Or Black Mirror was a what does Paul Heyman say? A spoiler, not a what?
Oh yeah, spoiler, not a prediction.
Not a prediction. Yeah, it's like that's just going to happen just because of that whole thing where you're like, oh, no, the best one. I don't know if you're aware of this. Irish listeners will be, James, but so in the space of 2 days, they went from okay, everything. We're not going to do any restrictions. No more restrictions before Christmas too. Everything closes at 8:00. Okay. What are you talking about? So the cinemas and stuff all close at 8:00 for no reason. It's like, okay.
Because you can't catch COVID after 8:00.
Like, they haven't reduced anything. It's just like, we're just going to make it more inconvenient. So, like, I went to go see Spider-Man. It was grand. Went to go see The Matrix. It was like jumping through like a million hoops to try and get into the cinema and then get home. It's like, you've made the problem so much worse because everybody now is squeezing it into a smaller time frame. Well done. That's why I'm saying, look, a VR headset, the Meta, you're fine. Just sit there and go, you know what? The world can burn around you, but you can have, whatever you want in the metaverse. So we might have to start doing the show in the metaverse.
It's the same argument I make for 24 hours drinking. Like the trouble only the trouble only starts when you put 200 people out onto the street at the same time.
This is fair. Once the air hits you, and then you're in a bad way.
If you had lads just staggering in and staggering out as and when it suited them.
I can't argue with that. I genuinely can't. But anyway, so lads, 2021 was a weird year. It was a weird year in general, but for wrestling, we went from the return of fans to no fans, to the return of fans again, to the return of CM Punk, to Walmart greeter Punk, to to a rake of people being fired from the WWE. And then also some just incredible wrestling, which all came pretty much exclusively from AEW and Impact Wrestling. So this list is quite interesting, where it's like, I am going to counterbalance it with some Impact Wrestling because nobody watches Impact Wrestling, which you totally should.
I do a little bit.
I know you do, but the majority of people don't because they all want their AEW. And
I watch the girls, I'm not watching the boys wrestle. They're boring, but yes.
Nobody watches Impact Wrestling for anything.
I'll watch it when Kenny Omega's on it. Actually, I do watch the pay-per-views. I watch the big ones.
I watch it when Jay White's on it, yeah.
I have to say, though, guys, highlight for me was Christian Cage coming back on his World Championship run. I loved it so much. But anyway, so I will be throwing in some Impact highlights from that. But it's weird because we talked a little bit before we went on air. It's very bleak with WWE, man. It's very bleak. Like, James, you were saying with the Steel Chair Awards that like there was that kind of drop off. And
I mean, you've got people just walking out now. Like, as we record this, it's 24 hours from the time that Tony Storm went, I'm off home. I've had enough. I'm not even going to give him a notice, and I'm just going to book a flight and
didn't
go
even
home.
wait for her release. I love that.
I'm done. And quite frankly, after the way she's been treated, I'm not shocked at all. And good for her, because it's like, sat around in catering for 3 months and then humiliated every time I go on television. Really, is this the place I want to be working?
Exactly, it'll be really interesting to watch what happens with her, whether or not because they're kind of caught in a bind. If they just let her go, then it kind of opens the door to other people who want to leave to just say, "Nah, to hell with your contract, I quit." Or if they pursue her for breach of contract, apparently there's a lot of people saying that those WWE contracts wouldn't stand up in court and that they wouldn't want to take the chance of a precedent being set.
Well, we've talked about this before, Martin, haven't we? Like, how are they getting away with it? This could be like as you said, the precedent to kind of stop WWE doing the nonsense that they do, where they can just release you at a because it cuts both ways. Obviously, if there is a way where they can just be like, we can let you go at any time, there has to be something in that contract that also allows them to pretty much do. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It has to be like a two-way street, but it's probably
if you're an independent contractor, like that's
exactly, yeah.
That's it. I mean, as well, with Toni Storm's an interesting one because she has more than one option. I mean, AEW is probably going to be the obvious thing, but Stardom are the second biggest wrestling company in Japan at the moment, just on ticket sales. And they've got all that Bushy Road money that New Japan has, and they want a bigger share of the market in North America. And she was a former Stardom champion. She won the Cinderella tournament. She was a big name in Stardom. So she grabbed the core audience straight away. And that would be a brilliant signing for them if they could get her back.
Yeah.
So there's all sorts of things out of Toni Storm isn't necessarily the best in-ring worker, but she has the attitude, she has the adaptability, and she has the pure talent of charisma and looks to be able to make it anywhere. But she's got that crossover North American style that could really hit for a different way of thinking. So I'm intrigued as to what happens with her. Really.
The thing now is as well that with once you go out of WWE, you're not even really limited to one company. You're saying she was options, but it's a cliche now at this stage, but the forbidden door, was hanging by its hinges.
Well, Chelsea Green kicked it off its hinges, I believe, because she worked for everyone at one point or another this year except AEW, and I think they just have her just for her to complete the set.
Although she was, I know it wasn't this year, but she was on All In.
All In, yeah. So,
but look, as I said, 2021 has been a year that's kind of like redefined what wrestling is. Or wrestling, and of course, for listeners of the TruePenny channel, like, obviously we're talking about North American wrestling, we're talking about WWE, AEW, Impact, all that stuff. It's redefined what that is. It reset a lot of what could be done. As you said, the Forbidden Door was kicked off its hinges, and not only that as well, it's like it kind of been like, well, AEW now is, while it's still the number 2, it kind of isn't. WWE is hanging on. We've made no secret here. We believe WWE is getting ready to be sold, or else Vince is just completely insane. Could actually be both. Like, genuinely, we don't know. But it really is only a matter of time if this kind of level of performance from AEW continues.
Well, we've seen with what WWE's plans are for the future, this NIL program, where they're literally just going for young athletes and hot athletic women. And then they'll just train them in the WWE style. So I think what we have here is it's not even going to be a case of the first and second wrestling company. I think the products over the next couple of years are just going to become so different that they'll just be separate things. They're not necessarily competition.
Well, that's it. There will be WWE and then there'll be AEW, but guys who you actually want to see wrestle rather than I just want to go see WWE.
It's the gap between sports entertainment and professional wrestling has become cataclysmically wide. I'm very into what Minoru Suzuki said this year, which was WWE's problem is they take a guy or a girl and go, well, they can't do this, so they top up what they can't do, forgetting about what makes them unique in the first place. His exact words was, you look at Jon Moxley, he's shit at everything else, but he's great at being Jon Moxley. That's why you go buy a ticket to see Jon Moxley.
Absolutely.
He can only do one thing, which is be Jon Moxley.
I think one of the other... Sorry, go on, Dara.
No, go on.
I was going to say, I think one of the other interesting things about all the other companies is that you get these guys and girls who've worked up through the indies and now they're working for all these other companies and they're picking up all these different styles. And then WWE, you have the performance center style. I think it just means you get a far better kind of buffet of match types outside of WWE.
Yeah,
The thing
styles
about it
make
is as
fights.
well, like they do, and he makes stars.
Yeah.
Like, think about it. Chris Jericho, but he's the go-to on this. He's like him or hate him. I don't know how you can't hate him. He hates his band, all right. Still has me blocked on Twitter. Still has me blocked on Twitter.
Judas slaps.
It does. No, I like Fozzy. I actually liked Fozzy a great deal until they blocked me for no reason. No, there was a reason, but it was a bad review like 5 years ago. Get over it. But yeah, and it's just like, what made him unique and what makes him unique is all those different styles that he has, all the different ways he reinvents himself, is because he's been in New Japan, he's been in Germany, he's been all over America, Canada, Europe. That's where you get the worldly feel of these guys. The same with Danielson, Omega. Who in WWE has that now? Like Finn Balor does, but they take him out and they destroyed Finn Balor this year.
But yeah, I
So
mean,
it's like,
it's something I mentioned before. It's something I didn't mention in the Steel Chair Awards, but there's been 3 times where you take a pro wrestler up against an MMA fighter and make stars. And the first one was Akira Hokuto and Shinobu Kandori in 1993. Made Hokuto a massive star, and Kandori. Ronda Rousey and Becky Lynch made Becky Lynch a superstar. 2 completely different styles, an MMA realistic style against a professional wrestling style. And it happened again this year, Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa. Styles make fights and they make stars, as Dara said.
Yeah,
I know parts of it were maligned, but I even thought the stuff with the Inner Circle and American Top Team, certain parts of it came across really well.
They will do, because it's about one style that flows and one style about spots, and then you can mix and match.
And look, we saw it with even in the WWE when Brock Lesnar came back, and that was his new character. But they've moved so far away from even trying to do something like that now that they just don't care. And I think that.
Hello?
Hey, Dara, you there? Hey, Martin.
Oh, sorry, he's dropped off there. But yeah, Dara was definitely in the middle of making a very good salient point.
Yeah, no, sorry, I was just saying that. Sorry, I was just saying, it is kind of that negativity that I don't want to kind of dwell on too much, because as bad as WWE was, AEW and Impact and New Japan and stuff and all that kind of stuff were all really good. They recovered quite well from the pandemic. But one thing that is really sad that we should talk about real quick is the death of NXT.
Oh my God.
Really, that puts the I think that was the nail in the coffin where you're like, right, it's over now. It's, as you said, sports entertainment is here to stay, and it's going to go really sports entertainment, and wrestling is going to be elsewhere.
But I mean, you can arguably say one of the reasons why O'Reilly and Cole and all of those other people were quite happy to let their contracts run out was because they've seen the writing on the wall. Medium-sized guys who can go are not going to be the bread and butter of WWE for any time soon, so they may as well go somewhere where they can make some money.
Well, if you even look at just even the history of TakeOver over the past 4 or 5 years, if that's your legacy, if you're looking at that as your legacy, and now you're looking at NXT 2.0, like, you'd go anywhere else. You go back to the indies.
Yeah. It sucks as well. Like, everything that Triple H built up is null and void now, and it's just like, okay. And look, the thing about it is, look, the truth is WWE can do what they want. They're going to be around no matter what. But from a wrestling perspective, from a wrestling fan, which again we are wrestling media, you can see it on this list. So if you guys are here to get some good WWE content, it's not on this list. I think there's literally no one from WWE on this list except for Roman Reigns.
I have one. It didn't even win match of the year, but I have one WWE honorable mention. So
okay, right. Well, let's get into it. So we'll start with the big enchilada first. So match of the year. So I'm gonna do this. So the way we're gonna do this is we're gonna do the write-ins first, and then we'll have James give his, and then Martin, you give yours. All right.
Cool.
So Hangman Page versus Omega from Chris. The Lucha Bros versus the Young Bucks in a steel cage match. Of course, that's on Bryn.
Beautiful.
So James.
So I'm doing my list because people may have heard the TruePenny show from this week where we discussed my awards. So to do something slightly different, I'm going to compare my Asian and North American lists and give an all-world award because I didn't watch any European wrestling this year.
That's
anyway, so my match of the year from Asia was Katsuyoshi Nakajima versus Keno at Noah's The Best about a month ago, which was a 50-minute draw with no high spots or kicks. And you wouldn't think, 60-minute draw that would just involve kicking. Oh, there was one high spot involved in the entire match, and it was an absolute thriller. And my other match of the year was Bryan Danielson versus Minoru Suzuki from AEW Rampage pre-show. And I have to say that of the two, the one I watched Obayashi versus Takeshita from DDT this weekend, which came close because it was like watching AJPW in the 1990s. It was a proper King's Road thriller of a wrestling match. Obayashi works for BJW, got a standing ovation when he left. But I'm going to go with Bryan Danielson versus Minoru Suzuki purely for the layout of the match and how it made me feel as a fan. It's the only match this year I've gone back and watched again because it meant so much to me as a wrestling fan. And the layout of it appears to be on Friday night, Tony Khan realizes he can steal a demographic or he can steal a rating. So he sets about building the biggest non-WWE TV show there's been in 20 years. And he talks to Bryan Danielson, who says, I want to wrestle Minoru Suzuki. And so he calls Minoru Suzuki's agent, and Minoru Suzuki's out at the seaside in New Jersey and goes, would you like to wrestle Bryan Danielson on international television or for AEW on Friday night? Yes, I would. I would like that a lot. And when Minoru Suzuki says yes, you buy gum, do you get him sorted? So they go on television on 4 days' notice, get an audience of 500,000 people on social media. And that is just insane to watch the type of wrestling I always want to watch.
It's amazing.
So, yeah.
And then Big Balls Tony goes and sticks it on Rampage buy-in on YouTube.
Yeah.
Just sometimes you don't know if he's a genius or if he's mad.
500,000 people watched Minoru Suzuki walk down the aisle, and I never thought I'm sure he never thought he'd have an audience that big anymore. Like he's one of the biggest stars in the world, but he's 53 years old. You know, and he's still one of the best wrestlers in the world. You know, he can get more out of one forearm than most wrestlers can get out of 3 eye spots.
And if he wasn't 53 years old, he wouldn't have the best nickname in all of wrestling, the Murder Grandpa.
His name in Japan is even better, which is the man with the worst personality in the world.
I love it. I love it so much. And continuing on with the Danielson thing, and I think, there's a big contender to be made for Bryan Danielson in Wrestler of the Year, but we'll get to that. Martin, you had Danielson and Omega.
I did, yeah. So my match of the year and the two honorable mentions I just want to briefly mention, I think they all indicate a kind of a shift in wrestling this year in that it has become much more about the in-ring ability and the in-ring matches. So the first honorable mention would be Walter versus Ilya Dragunov. On
yes, I forgot
NXT TakeOver.
I totally forgot that was this year. That was a great match.
Well, that was one of the things about trying to decide a match of the year is that you suffer from an awful lot of recency bias, and then you start thinking, God, was Pac Omega, was that this year or was that 2 years ago or was that? But no, the second Walter Dragunov was this year, and it was every bit as good as the first, and somewhat helped more by the fact that it had a crowd and wasn't in the empty NXT UK shed. But yeah, fantastic match. The second honorable mention, Hangman versus Danielson. What a fight. And I think it says a lot that the top two matches for me were both draws. Again, it goes, it speaks to that shift to the quality being more about the in-ring stuff. But absolutely match of the year, Kenny Omega, Bryan Danielson, for the big fight. I've never in a long time experienced such a big fight feel, such genuine anticipation. Like there wasn't a story to build it up. It was, here are the two biggest fighters from the two biggest companies. And then they went out there and they actually lived up to the hype. And and now that we know Omega was doing it all with a laundry list of injuries, I just for me that was match of the year.
That's fair. I have to I have to give credit to Omega as well for what he did in Impact. Fantastic match with Rich Swann, which was just unreal. And then he had the match that really kind of piqued my interest more than anything else was because I love Christian Cage. Was just the series he had with Christian Cage, and I was just like, look, I don't care if anyone else likes this. I love this, so this is brilliant. But yeah, look, you can't go wrong with any of those picks. The Lucha Brothers versus Young Bucks, probably the greatest cage match of all time in North America. Like, one of the greatest tag matches of all time in North America. So, come on, pick any of those matches.
I think that match was. There's very few tag matches I've seen, or very few matches I've seen that were on that level. I mean, a lot of the TruePenny Show awards, this is our format, and we've used it across everything, is down to arbitrary stuff. Like Danielson versus Minoru Suzuki is my bag, and I'm not knocking the Bucks and the Lucha Bros because it was on another level, But if I'm picking my match of the year, that's my match of the year for me. And I think the Lucha Bros and stuff, the only tag team match I've seen close to it was Toyota and Yamada versus Dynamite Kansai and Shimoda from '94, which is the best tag match. It's the best wrestling match I've ever seen. Like miles ahead, it moved wrestling forward. It's the match that inspired Kenny Omega to be Kenny Omega and Kota Ibushi to be Kota Ibushi. So it's a once in a lifetime match. You won't see anything like that again for another 20 years.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wrestler of the year.
Did you do your match of the year, Daryl?
Yeah, I said either the Lucha Brothers versus the Young Bucks or else the entire Christian Cage Omega thing.
Okay.
That was really good. Wrestler of the year, Kenny Omega is going to be up there, I think. Even though I'm not a huge fan of him, I do have to give him a lot of props. But before we get to that, Darby Allin from Chris, which
nice.
Eddie Kingston from Bryn. Okay.
It's a good shout, I think.
Yeah, they're fair, but
to
be fair, wrestler of the year for me has to be Daniel Bryan. And the reason why I say it is he went from always being a good wrestler, and I am not a Daniel Bryan fan by any stretch of the imagination. I really amn't. But holy hell, he just goes out and has these matches, and you're like, wow, incredible! Just absolutely incredible. And he's my pick. Omega's up there too. But it's just, what Kenny Omega can do, right? Daniel Bryan or Bryan Danielson, you forgot what he can do because he wasn't doing it for so long. He just wasn't able to. And for me, that's where I'm just absolutely he has to get it. What do you think, James?
Well, my two picks were two very, very different people. My Asian pick was Katsuyuki Nakajima, who has risen to the top of Noah. He had an amazing feud with his own tag team partner, which ended up in a cage match, which is the first Noah cage match, hair versus hair, which he lost, but turned that into a championship winning run. And he's been on fire ever since. He's defending the GHC Heavyweight Championship against Go Shiozaki. Budokan Hall on Saturday. It's the first of this 2 weeks is the big Japanese season for wrestling. DDT had a massive show. Glate had a massive show today. Stardom had a massive show yesterday. So it's the big season because we're getting to Wrestle Kingdom and everyone's same as WrestleMania in North America. Everyone puts a show on in late January, in early March, and first week in January, last week in December is the big show for Japanese companies. And Nakajima has been an outstanding year and consistently on top of everything. And it's dragged Noah up. Noah easily the second biggest men's promotion in Japan now. And they're looking at going back to Budokan on a regular basis, not just as a one-off. So that was my Japanese awards and my Asian awards. And my American pick was Deonna Purrazzo because, I love Omega and I love the work he's done. But as Ric Flair once said, being the man and staying the man are two different things. And Purrazzo has been the standard for women's wrestling in North America in any company. She is Impact Wrestling's Flair or Nick Bockwinkel. She carries herself in that way. So of the two, I'm going to edge it to Purrazzo. I think Purrazzo has had the more difficult task of maintaining excellence throughout her year, whereas Nakajima kind of had to get there. Whereas Purrazzo had to stay as the best there was. And she's done it with aplomb across NWA, AAA, and Impact Wrestling. And I hope that Forbidden Door has one more swing left on it to get her to AEW before the end of 2022. That would be nice.
I can see that happening.
Yeah.
Totally can see that happening. Quickly to move ahead there, Martin.
Oh, sorry, go on.
I was going to say Kenny Omega.
Yeah, so again, this was one of those things where you do an end of year show and you suffer from a lot of recency bias. Like when I first saw Wrestler of the Year, it was Bryan Danielson straight away. But when you take in the whole year, like Bryan Danielson, the past 6 months, 100% wrestler of the past 6 months. But when you take Kenny Omega right back to 2021, Kenny Omega kicked off 2021 with a match of the year candidate against Rey Fenix and never dipped below that for the whole year. He fought in Impact, he fought in AAA, he did the belt collector gimmick, working while injured. And I mean, there's so many great arguments out there for Wrestler of the Year. And I actually completely understand the one about Eddie Kingston, because Eddie Kingston is a wrestler who makes you want to live and die for him. Even if he doesn't have the best technical matches in the world, when Eddie comes out and Eddie grabs the mic or gets in the ring, like, you're 100% behind him. But I just couldn't not give it to Omega.
Yeah, no, that's fair. No, I do want that makes a lot of sense as well. Like, Omega is just so consistent, and as I said when I was giving it to Bryan Danielson, it was like you knew what Omega could do, but it's more kind of like the shock that you're like, wow, after basically being retired and never thinking you're going to wrestle again, to come back and be able to do what Bryan Danielson has done is pretty amazing, But that's fair picks. Can't complain about those at all. I'm going to skip promotion of the year because obviously it's AEW. Come on.
I don't know, James. James, what do you think?
My promotion of the year is Ring of Honor.
The one that doesn't exist anymore.
Big
Grim. Yeah, it's a little bit.
I picked. My Japanese pick was Tokyo Joshi Pro Wrestling, and I think they've done brilliantly well and they've shown real growth in the year. But Ring of Honor was the most consistent product that I watched all the pay-per-views of all the way through.
Fair.
They had really good representation, especially of Latino and Black wrestlers, which other companies couldn't touch because they were trying to find a new roster, because most of their roster had gone to AEW and they were trying to find a new niche. And because they were actually the best employers through COVID, who paid everybody, they suffered for it, and it's not fair. And I hope they're back in April. And Jonathan Gresham and Josh Woods and Roxy and the Briscoes are going to represent them on the circuit, and hopefully they get to go back to their home in April. But they're my promotion of the year.
Do you have any kind of, because me and Dara had a crack about this last week, do you have any kind of insight about what's happening in April or what the plan is?
I have no insight about what's happening in April, but I find it really interesting that Bandido is defending his version of the Ring of Honor World Heavyweight Championship, which he never lost, at a Terminus show in Atlanta, which is a company owned by Jonathan Gresham, the other Ring of Honor Heavyweight Champion. So I think what the big money back is going to be unification, undisputed World's Heavyweight Champion, or World's Champion, I should say. They don't have divisions in Ring of Honor. So I think it's going to be undisputed World's Champion when they come back in April. And I think they've probably got a plan. But I think it might revolve around, I would say, having some small talent on guaranteed contracts like they had in about 2015. Instead of the whole roster being on guaranteed contracts, it might be a bit more of a Paris Domal in Mexico situation where people were free, float in and out, which would be an interesting way of doing wrestling, I think.
But you do see them coming back in some form.
I mean, Rakabani is doing commentary for GCW, and he was angling to get on the Impact show as well for the Ring of Honor title defenses there, and he's doing commentary for New Japan on Strong. Coleman's got his own podcast, which is being watched from the Ring of Honor website. So I can't see it shutting down completely. I think they're leaving as many options open as they can, but I'd love to see it back.
One of the more grim, not predictions, but one of the more grim outcomes me and Dara had discussed was that maybe one of the bigger companies might just buy up the tape library.
I think that's a possibility. I would kind of hope it would be AEW because they've got all that Ring of Honor talent, but money's money, and whoever it is, selling their library would be the easiest way to make a quick buck. But, it's a bit like it's the kind of thing you should do at the very end of your career in the last desperation maneuver. But I know they've been trying to sell it for a while. I would think AEW are going to have a streaming service in the end. They'd be insane not to, but they need a library because there's no point at the minute. It's like even my local promotion in Grimsby, BWR, they were like, they started their online streaming service in the pandemic purely because they had a bunch of tapes waiting from about 2 years. So well, at least we've got something to sell to keep things ticking over.
James, are you suggesting you wouldn't sign up to a subscription service to watch 600 hours of Dark?
I'm currently signed up to Wrestle Universe, which covers 4 companies and does a new show every day of wrestlers you've never heard of. So apparently, yes, I would.
All right. So again, a quick one here that just has no competition. Comeback of the year. All right. So has to be Christian Cage. I'm only kind of joking. I'm not gonna lie. No, but look, I have to give it to CM Punk. I think across the board, everyone did. Both Chris Bryn and Martin, yourself gave it to Punk as well. I'm not gonna lie. I did get goosebumps when he came back, but then when he started doing his 4 months of being a Walmart greeter, happy to be here, Phil. Kind of took the sheen off it. So a great moment. Just I think Christian Cage's return was a bit more like in the immediate year that was 2021. We had a much better storytelling, and here's why. Christian Cage had his moment with Edge in the Royal Rumble at the beginning of the year. Left, was written off TV basically after the whole Randy Orton thing, and then showed back up in AEW. Went over to TNA, or Impact Wrestling, won the title. And I'm like, well, man, that's pretty cool. Yep. So, jokingly, but also not really.
And had great matches the whole time.
Oh man, consistently great matches.
In fact, the only thing that kind of let his comeback down was if he had to just come back on that pay-per-view, I can't remember which one it was, but if he had to just come back, that would have blown the roof off the place. It was the fact that they hyped it up so much, everyone thought it was going to be Lesnar. Yeah. No, and it's just like, I think as well, the Christian Cage thing is funny, and we will jump to Punk in a second, but the Christian Cage thing is funny because, like, people, I think they've been conditioned to not know how big of a star he actually is or how good he actually is because they didn't watch TNA in 2005. Yeah. Not many people did. I remember I was there. It was a very niche audience, but his run was really cool. And the people who knew were like, he's actually great. But what was interesting was, over that whole, 3-4 months, where it was happening, people were like, "Whoa, Christian Cage's really good." I'm like, "Yeah, welcome, welcome to the club." So for me, it was really cool. It was completely. I never thought that would happen. Genuinely, just did not think that would happen in a million years. But it was still really, really cool to see. But we have to talk about CM Punk. So CM Punk, of course, came back. Everyone lost their collective, you know what. Martin, the floor is yours. The return of the year, the return of the decade, and an absolutely sensational, like you say, moment, whatever you thought about the run, the return at the first dance was something that was, I know the guy became a meme, the guy crying in the audience, but I think there was like genuine emotion that a lot of people felt, and genuine emotion, maybe something that's a wee bit rarer in wrestling nowadays. Yeah. And whatever you think of, like I say, of his run since that, I personally have loved it. But he brought that back, and if only for that one night, it's still real to me. Damn it!
It did have that. That impact. All right. Look, as I said, a great moment taken in of itself. When he did the legs crossing thing, I'm like, oh no, we're in a bad spot. And I think now he's kind of come out of it by actually like being a character again, rather than, as I said, look, I don't care if it's over if it's an overworked meme, but it's true. He was like a Walmart greeter, hyping up the crowd.
I think the thing here
I think the thing with
happy to be here, Phil, was that There was nothing else they could do. Everywhere he
That was
went,
it. Yeah.
it was just deafening cheers.
Yeah.
And I think they just said, look, you're just gonna have to do that for the first year.
Yeah.
And then, but I mean, we've seen how the right story can change it. When he went up
Absolutely.
against Kingston,
That's when it
people were
changed.
cheering Kingston.
Yeah. No, that's when it changed. I do think that that kind of put me back on the boat where I'm like, actually no, Punk can still go once he's given. Like there was never a doubt that he could go. He
7 years, a lot of ring rust.
no, he did a lot of,
especially for a guy who's not a high spot guy. He's a
well,
storyteller.
I would say he did an awful lot of damage to him, to his actual character by doing MMA and getting legitimately battered.
We got to go over this again, Dar.
Well, we do. We flip and have to.
Me and Dar have had this fight about 3 times.
We have, and we're going to do it again at the end of the year, drunkenly over Christmas, like we're supposed to, like friends do. The reason why is because he delegitimized himself. He built up his career where he's like, oh, I'm the best MMA, blah, blah, blah. And he goes in and doesn't get battered. And it's like, no. So the
response I always give is that he's a wrestler and he went into MMA. Like, you wouldn't criticize a boxer for losing a kickboxing match.
No, you know what it's like though? It's like when you have, your friend who's like, oh, I'd kill him, and then he gets into a fight, gets battered. You're like, I remember when he got battered. It just never goes away. Years later.
But don't tell me that. I have my first MMA fight coming up in 3 weeks. Don't tell me it never goes away.
But you haven't built your gimmick around being the best MMA fighter in the world.
Or the best fighter in the world.
Or the best fighter in the world. Yeah. That's what Punk was saying.
I think that's the one problem with Punk with me. He's always talking about like being the best performer in the world. And it's like, it's a bit like when Bryan Danielson came to AEW, it was like, oh, Punk says he wants to be the best performer in the world and really want to work with these young guys. Now I want to kick their fucking heads in.
Yeah,
that's how he should have responded.
Exactly.
That's.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the one. I love Punk as a performer. I love Punk as a talker. But just tweak that character to be about winning rather than performing, because it's like.
But when you look at the wrestler, like at AEW as a whole, I mean, you can't have the two guys who are there to kick heads and be the like those two are on it. Might be long term, but those two on a collision course.
Oh, they
absolutely are.
That's going to be amazing.
That's all out. Like probably 2 years away, I'd say.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
For
Punk
the belt.
Danielson, holy hell! That's
for the belt. Mark my words. 2 years.
Yeah.
But the thing about it is, look, Punk. He had to overcome this. This was something that as soon as he lost as badly as he did, he was going to have to overcome this, and looks like he has kind of overcome it now, where it's like, all right, fair. But what they should have done is they should have actually leaned into it. If I was booking that, I would have said, here, Kingston, talk about the MMA thing incessantly, and just properly just beat him over the head with. And in that way, it's like, okay, we've got it out in the open now. It's over. But I think what the route he did went was actually pretty good.
I think it's coming with the MJF stuff. I think MJF is going to lean heavy into that next year.
You have to. There is only one way to do this, and that's like get it over with, so it's like part of the storyline, and then it moves on.
The only thing with that is MJF has to lose then, and he's already lost one big feud against the main star, so he's kind of got to come out at least a little bit ahead on this. We'll see. Well, see, that's why I look. He can lose. They can do a best of 3 thing, like Punk doesn't really necessarily need to win all the time. Like he could do a best of 3 or a rubber match or something like that. So
MJF has a way of humiliating his opponents without actually burying them. Like he told Darby Allin, I'm going to beat you with a headlock takeover, and he beat him with a headlock takeover, and anyone else that would have buried. But man, MJF's just, I think he's just money. He's going to be the top guy in the next 10 years.
Apparently WWE really want him too. So
I just don't see it. Because I think he's a guy who, look, everybody wants their payday, but I think he knows that he would never be allowed to be MJF.
All you have to do is show him EC3 and go, do you really want to be a mute? Because that's what they'll do to you.
But how do you write promos for MJF? Like, what ideas can you possibly come up for that character other than better than the ones that he's going to come up with? There aren't any.
No.
It's just it's silly. But he can't walk into the company. I mean, I was reading the interviews about Karrion Kross and Scarlett this week, and they were like, we did our level best to be nice people that didn't want to rock the boat, and we wanted to be we do want to be considered to be difficult to work with, as Keith Lee got labelled with that. And it's like, and we got saddled with this shit. So what do you do?
I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind. Karrion Kross, they had a ready-made package, and they ruined it. And it's like, you had everything you want. Yeah. It's fine the way it is. What are you doing?
and then you fired him as if it was his fault.
Yeah, it's like
but that's it. That's it. I mean, we was talking about Toni Storm earlier, but she was she obviously saw the writing on the wall as well.
Yeah,
it's like, but I'm going nowhere. Someone wants me to go nowhere, so I'll go then.
You'd also have to convince, if you're going to bring MJF over, you'd have to go, right, here's a load of money, here's a huge pile of money, but for at least the next year or two, you have to stop wrestling in the main event with top stars in front of 20,000 people and go to NXT 2.0.
Yeah,
that's it, and it's one of the reasons. One of the reasons why they'll never get Okada. There was negotiations with Okada like 5 or 6 years ago, and I think he probably said, $4 million every year, and I run a main event.
And that's
because that's what he get in New Japan. So why shouldn't you get that in WWE?
And the manager one is an interesting one. I don't know, like I don't really have much to say on the whole manager thing, but there is an interesting one here. And I do like this one. I am just conscious of time. The Mick Foley Machismo Award. I do enjoy this one, James. It's gas. And Darby Allin pretty much won it across the board for everybody. I'm gonna say Jon Moxley, but Darby Allin won it across the board.
I had a Sushi Anita because the match he had in the States was hilarious, and we did an entire podcast about it. Me, John, and Brett from FMWWrestling.us, because Brett was there. And he told us the whole backstage story. You've got to go listen to that podcast because it's fantastic.
So just for our listeners who are listening in Dublin and don't know what this award actually symbolizes, can you kind of give us some background?
The Mick Foley Masochism Award is for wrestlers who have put themselves either mentally or physically on the line for the industry, or purely just to get a big payday, to be honest with you. So previous winners have been people like Jon Moxley for like the sacrifices for the industry, and sometimes just people who've been through the grinder, and we wish to give them some support because they deserve it. But yeah,
2021 is the year that I got an appreciation for Nick Gage. Which
yeah,
and I wouldn't mind, like, shame Dave isn't here, but he's here in spirit.
I had down as honorable mention Matt Cardona, because I thought he took a shitty gimmick and or not a shitty gimmick, a shitty deal, and he just made a hell of a run on the indies.
I tell you, his indie matches were super good, man.
He went out and got himself murked because he had to. I also had down just now. This is because it was all sort of concentrated in one match, but Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa, for their lights out match. But
brilliant.
In terms of longevity, in terms of every week, even just purely for the way he does the suicide dive, as if it is a literal suicide dive. Darby Allin,
that's fair. But no argument for me.
Dara, just before you skip over best manager, if nobody else has any objections, then I want to award it to Arm Anderson.
Oh no! This is why I skipped over it.
I had Rebel because I thought she was brilliant. So,
I love Art for sheer madness. For whether he was out the back of Cody's house with a bin burning all his clothes, or he was talking about how he'd pull a Glock on a carjacker. Arn was just fantastic.
Paul Heyman and Alex Arbranez, is that how you say it? Bryn, what are you doing to me? I can't read.
I don't know. They're in WWE. I don't watch that.
I don't know what this is. But anyway, that's who Bryn picked. I don't really have a manager pick this year. Actually, no, I lie. His name escaped me though. Who was Omega's floozy?
Don Callis.
There we go. Don Callis gets it.
Yeah, that's a really good call.
Can we rename this to the Floozy of the Year award?
No, because
No.
that's a hideous kind of sexist approach to the whole thing, considering the
They're all
fact that
men.
most managers are women.
They're all men in this case, though. We haven't picked one woman.
Rebel.
Rebel.
Oh, Rebel. Oh, okay, fair enough.
And yeah, Mio Abe in Japan was my other pick, who was also female. So
Well, see, James, isn't aware of how we use this term. Floozy was mainly applied to whoever follows Chris Jericho around.
And also, I had down as an honourable mention Ethan Page, who, while he is not a woman, has the tightest tits in the game.
All right. I still think Floozy of the Year is a good one. All right. So most improved. Pretty much everyone went for Tony Conti except for Chris, who went for Roman Reigns for finally developing a character. Fair. That's a fair point. Okay, who have you got, James?
Ali Catch from GCW, because she went from being this kind of sweet, nice girl who was, really just happy to be there, to being this killer heel for most of 2021, to the point where they just started cheering her because she was that good. And she developed this online character that has been the main event for GCW, tagging with Effie against Matt Cardona and Chelsea Green. And it's burned the house down and got them to the Manhattan Center in New York. So for me, she's been an outstanding performer and really improved as a wrestler in the last 12 months as well.
Unreal. Martin?
Yeah, I went Ty Conti just because the visible difference over the past year has been astonishing. But I would like to mention Dante Martin, who's a really young guy, and a tag team with his brother, and then had that whipped out from underneath him and stepped up to, main event level stuff. I thought that was really impressive.
I'm going to go with WWE Crown Jewel for actually being good this year. It wasn't a complete waste of time. So that gets my most improved this year. And finally,
no journalists murdered. So that's
no one was held up in the airport.
Baby steps.
Numerous other human rights violations are available.
And finally, lads, because I'm conscious of time, we have our moment of the year. So, moment of the year is a personal thing. Hangman wins the title, is what Bryn went with. WWE debuting for WWE I wish it was for WWE. For WWE, still gives me chills from Chris. I'm gonna say my moment of the year was when I was on the Thunderdome and I got to see myself laughing.
Hey!
It was hilarious. I was just like, this is ridiculous, but it was just funny. So that was my moment of the year. James, what have you got?
I did have Punk returns to AEW, but I'm going to put it down to Katsuyori Shibata at the G1 final, because he does returns differently to everybody else in the world. Doesn't tell anyone he's doing anything. Turns up, his music hits, he comes out, and has a match with Zack Sabre Jr., despite the fact that 2 years ago he get kicked in the head so hard he had to retire. And just had a grappling match with Zack Sabre Jr., and everyone in the building's going like, "It's Katsuyori Shibata, please don't die. It's Katsuyori Shibata, please don't die." And he's got a match at Wrestle Kingdom against X in a Lancastrian rules catch wrestling match, because he said at the press conference, pro wrestling is based around the Lancastrian style. And I just instantly imagined him with a whippet and a flat cab in a pub in Oldham.
They should do that. Totally do it. Martin, what have you got?
Yeah, Hangman wins the title. The payoff to 3 years of exceptional storytelling. The match itself was incredible. The payoff was what everyone wanted. There was we didn't know after the past 2 years what was going to happen. There was a full crowd there to greet him. And it was just, it was another one of those moments that was up there with Punk in terms of real emotion. The other moment of the year is entirely negative, and it's the exploding ring from Revolution.
Oh no!
Which did, not only did it overshadow what was an amazing match. Two guys absolutely murdered each other, but all anyone remembers is the farting ring at the end.
That's what makes that Onita match so incredible, because he insisted on bringing his own explosive experts from Japan with him, and he tried to get the explosives on the plane. Didn't go down well.
Oh well.
But what got me most about the exploding ring was I vividly remember, even though it was 4 a.m. and I was half cut, I vividly remember sitting up watching that, and the emotional build was so fantastic. Mox was battered and bruised. Kingston came running out to help him. The countdown went down and he gave up and he just threw his body over him. And you were ready for this just emotional peak. I honest to God think the fart that followed set AEW back by a year.
It did, yeah. It did. Well, as bad as that was, I will remind you how the year started with Lexibus throwing fireballs at people. The bar wasn't very high.
I think if we could have I know you're conscious of time, but if we could have just another award for called the Just Stop Award, it would be no more magic, no more winking dolls or zombies, or you can have someone who's spooky or someone who's like, oh, I don't know how they did that, but it's somewhat plausible, but no more overt magic.
Then that means we're never going to have the Fiend anywhere because he can't do anything other than that. That's his whole gimmick.
No, but if you did the Fiend properly, he's just a mental guy who puts on a mask and goes mad. There's loads of them.
All right, folks, that's going to do it for this edition of the Wrestling Rewind here on Phoenix 92.5 FM. If you want the full show, there's 2 ways you're going to be able to get it. Join us live 11:30 p.m., 6:30 p.m. Eastern, over on the Wrestling Rewind YouTube channel. TheWrestlingRewind.com will get you there, and you can join the chat and join in on the fun. Also, if you want, you can check us out on the podcast. The podcast can be got from our channel, Nerd to Know Media. You can subscribe there, or you can go to the TruePenny channel, or the TruePenny Show channel, and you'll be able to get it there for free, no cost to you, and there's a whole bunch of content there as well. But thank you for checking us out here on Phoenix 92.5 FM, the Wrestling Rewind. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to a Nerd to Know Media production.